Do you remember when a Friday night family sitcom looked like the safest place on TV starting in 1991? Step by Step gave America exactly what it loved. Back then, a house that was always loud, a theme song so cheerful that just hearing a few seconds of it could bring a whole stretch of your life rushing back. It felt familiar. It felt comforting. It felt almost harmless. Or at least, that is what the audience got to see. Today, we are counting down the 20 weirdest facts about Step by Step. We are going to talk about a past Carol had that was enough to make ABC panic and a disgusting personality hiding behind a handsome face. And trust me, if you think this was just a sweet little TGIF family sitcom, the facts near the top of this list are going to make you look at it in a completely different way. Now then, let us start with number 20. Number 20. Step by Step was once treated like trashy copycat TV when it first arrived. One of the most remembered family sitcoms of the 90s was once dismissed like a second-rate knockoff. That is not an exaggeration. When Step by Step premiered in 1991, a lot of critics looked at it like a cheap and insulting redo of the Brady Bunch. One reviewer flat out called the pilot plain awful. Another one landed an even nastier hit, demonically slick junk food. In plain English, before it became a memory, Step by Step was treated like a fake product that did not deserve to last. And that is where the real irony kicks in. The very thing critics looked down on was the same thing that kept viewers coming back into the living room week after week. That overly polished look, that easy rhythm, that feeling like it had been packaged in advance for Friday night. Some people called it fake, but for millions of American families, that was exactly what they wanted to turn on after a long, exhausting week. Honestly, I do not care much that people once called it a copy of somebody else's show. If a program is tough enough, it outlives the sneering. But trust me, that second-rate knockoff label was still the easy part. What happened later with one very familiar face from the show was a whole lot harder to swallow. Number 19. A family sitcom. Torn apart by a real-life scandal.
Who are you?
I'm Cody. I'm Frank's nephew. I live in the van.
What is the worst thing that can happen to a family sitcom? It is not being called a knockoff in the beginning. It is when an actor in real life gets tied to domestic violence. That was Cody. Cody was not the kind of character you just plug in to fill space. He was the thing that made this show feel less well-behaved, less flat, less predictable. The second Cody walked into a scene, the energy changed. And that is exactly why, when Sasha Mitchell, the man behind that character, got caught up in a domestic violence case involving his former wife Jeanette Robbins, everything changed color overnight. From that point on, it was very hard to look at Cody with the same eyes. After that incident, Cody disappeared from the regular lineup after season 5. He did come back in season 7, and he even showed up in the next to last episode, but honestly, it no longer felt like a missing piece coming home. It felt more like a shadow returning after the room had already changed. Truth be told, I hate facts like this. Not because they ruin a sitcom, because they ruin the innocence of the memory. By the time Sasha Mitchell came back, Step by Step was already near the end of the road, and CBS canceled the series not long after that. Some things television can keep writing past, but some cracks once they show up cannot be pretended away. Number 18. Your childhood opening credits might have been one very expensive illusion. A lot of viewers probably thought being in a sitcom had to be a wonderful job. The whole cast gets taken to Magic Mountain, running through the crowd, climbing onto rides, laughing and talking like they are having the time of their lives. Going out and having fun as part of work, I used to think sitcom acting really was that easy. But it turns out that was just an illusion. The more it looked like a carefree day out, the less it actually was one. The production paid for that space to shoot there, and yet the actors themselves were not free to enjoy those thrill rides the way the audience imagined, simply because insurance would not allow it. The more you think about it, the more it feels like a perfect television contradiction. They were standing in the middle of an amusement park, selling the audience a feeling of total freedom, while everything around them was being controlled much more tightly than most viewers ever realized. Television back then was incredibly good at creating something that felt totally natural, even when there was a whole machine behind it, calculating every frame. And brace yourself, because we are about to get to a fact so strange that ABC itself once panicked over it. Number 17. The minute Carol was given too real a past, ABC immediately lost its nerve. I am telling you, just hearing this idea out loud is enough to make me think the people at ABC must have gone pale back then. Because the Carol most viewers remember is the very model of a family TV mother. And then somebody came up with an idea that honestly I find both hilarious and wonderful. Young Carol had gone to Woodstock, danced topless on the roof of a van, and smoked weed. Just putting that version of Carol next to the sweet Friday Night Mom version is already enough to make this whole story wonderfully weird. And you know what is funniest of all? That was the part ABC reacted to the strongest. A blended family with 6 kids and all kinds of chaos inside the house, they could live with that. But give the central mother of the show a past that was a little too vivid, a little too real, a little too rebellious, and suddenly the whole network lost its nerve. By the time it made it to air, the sharpest edge of the story had been sanded down quite a bit. Carol was still allowed to have a past, but she was not allowed to have the kind of past that made viewers raise an eyebrow for too long. But anyway, let us set ABC's panic aside for a second. I want to test you with something a lot more fun. Did you really watch Step by Step closely enough to catch one tiny detail that most viewers never noticed? Number 16.3. Cast members were left-handed. All right here. I want to challenge you a little. Not with plot, not with loud behind-the-scenes drama, but with a tiny detail only people who watch very closely would notice. On Step by Step, 3 familiar faces shared something in common that most viewers probably never caught even after all those years. I will give you a few seconds to guess. One was the weirdest guy in the Lambert household. One was the son who was around through nearly all of the early years. And the third was the quick-witted little sister who always seemed to enter a scene with more energy than the rest of the room put together. If you just thought of Cody, JT, and Al, you got it right. Sasha Mitchell, Brandon Call, and Christine Lakin were all left-handed. It sounds tiny, but this is exactly the kind of detail I love, because once you know it, you almost cannot stop seeing it. The way they hold a pen, reach for something, turn their bodies in ordinary little household scenes. Suddenly it all becomes a small game between the show and the audience. Number 15. Karen looks like she was written. Specifically for Angela Watson. There are some roles where you can tell the casting was smart. Then there are roles that fit so perfectly, you get the feeling nobody needed a second try. Karen Foster is that kind of role. Because Karen is not just the pretty daughter who likes attention, has a little flair, and knows exactly how she looks on camera. She also carries the exact energy of somebody who grew up surrounded by stage lights, compliments, and a world that is always telling you to walk into the room with the most perfect smile you can manage. And that is where it gets interesting. Angela Watson in real life was not all that far from that world herself. Before Step by Step, she had already spent her childhood going through beauty pageants and talent competitions, collecting piles of trophies and crowns along the way. So when she stepped into Karen, it never felt like an actress trying hard to play that kind of girl. It felt more like television had found the one person who already had that glow and put her exactly where she belonged. And if you think that is just a cute little coincidence, the next fact is even stranger. This time, it is not about the cast. It is about the set. Number 14. You may have already lived in the same house without ever knowing it. There is a trick American television got very good at, and most viewers never even noticed. It is not just about reusing props. It is about reusing familiarity itself. You look at a living room, a staircase, a corner of a kitchen, and you get the feeling you have been there before. Not because you are watching the same show again, but because Hollywood will sometimes literally take an old space, rearrange the furniture, change the lighting, put a different family inside it, and then wait to see if anybody notices. Step by Step had exactly that kind of weirdness. A lot of the interior sets used for scenes inside the house had already shown up on Valerie and Family Matters. Just think about that. The same kind of wall panels, the same rhythm of the staircase, the same unmistakable family sitcom atmosphere, and all America had to do was watch different people walk through the living room and suddenly believe it was a completely different home. Number 13. For a Brief Moment. Step by Step sounded like a Whitney Houston hit by the 6th season of Step by Step. Whitney Houston released a hit song with that exact same title, Step by Step, from the soundtrack to The Preacher's Wife. The song itself had nothing to do with this sitcom, and there was never any official connection to the Lamberts. But here is the part I love. The chorus lands on a phrase that fans of this show instantly recognize: step by step, day by day. If you grew up with American television in the 90s, that is exactly the kind of coincidence that makes your memories crash into each other. On one side, you have a Friday night family sitcom. On the other, one of the biggest voices in pop and soul at the time. And yet, with just a few words, those two worlds that should have nothing to do with each other suddenly touch the exact same memory center. Number 12. There was a stretch of television that almost refused to let Staci Keanan go. Let me ask you something. Where do you remember Staci Keanan from first? Was it Dana Foster on Step by Step? Or have you been around long enough to remember her from before that? Because what is pretty funny here is that before she became the smart daughter with the razor-sharp tongue who always looked at the rest of the family like she was the only person in the room with a functioning brain, Staci Keanan had almost been living inside family sitcoms already. Step by Step was not her first big sitcom arrival. It was her third one in a row. First came My Two Dads, then Going Places. And when that show ended, Miller Boyett more or less placed her straight into Step by Step, like American television had absolutely no intention of letting that face disappear from the screen. Number 11. The Cody, you remember, was not exactly the original Cody. When people talk about Cody, they usually remember either the goofy, kind-hearted, slightly naive but lovable guy, or a drifter with a very obvious ladies' man streak. If the first version popped into your head, you remember him more clearly than most viewers do. Because the Cody most people still carry around in their memory is not exactly the Cody who first showed up. Right from his first appearance on the show, he was written with more of a guy who likes attention, confident enough to let JT push him into asking Dana out, and clearly not built from the start as some kind of safe role model. And then, American sitcoms did the thing they do best. When a character starts connecting with viewers, especially younger viewers, the show quietly sands off the sharper edges. Cody gradually lost some of that blowhard energy, lost some of that drifter charm, and got pushed into a gentler version, sweeter, kinder, almost turning into a lovable goofball with a good heart the whole family could accept. Later on, the show even used Cody in a storyline about saving himself for marriage, and that detail alone tells you just how far the character had been rewritten from those early steps. Number 10. Step by Step did not die. It just grew old alongside its audience. If you want to know whether a sitcom is still alive, you do not need to look at old ratings. You do not need to go digging through reviews from back in the day. You wait a few decades, then see whether anybody still wants to see those faces again. With Step by Step, the answer is yes. Very clearly, yes. Because even at the cast reunion at 90s Con in 2024, this show still had enough pull to bring everybody back together, and more importantly, enough power to bring the audience back to a piece of their own memory. That is what fascinates me. Step by Step was never the kind of show people talked about like it was some television masterpiece. It did not survive on that kind of prestige. It survived in a much quieter way. It stayed in people's heads through the theme song, through the staircase, in the house, through the familiar lines, through that feeling that Friday night once meant a whole family sitting in front of the TV together. So, when the cast stood next to each other on a stage after all those years, the thing that came back to life was not just the show. What came back to life was an older version of the audience too. Number 9. Frank Lambert has been off the air for years, but Father's Day is still here. I have always thought there is a very simple way to tell whether an on-screen relationship had any real heart in it. Just like when you look at the long life of a show, try looking at what happens years later when the set is gone. The shooting schedule is over and everybody has their own life. Do people still remember each other on the days that matter? With Step by Step, there is one little detail I find more beautiful than a whole lot of noisy behind-the-scenes stories. Patrick Duffy once said he still gets Father's Day cards from Christine Lakin. Number 8. One stayed in Hollywood, the other walked straight into a courtroom. If you told somebody that two of the girls from Step by Step would one day head in two directions that had almost nothing to do with each other, not many people would have believed you. But it is true. One stayed with the lights, the cameras, the sound stages, the business of storytelling. The other left the screen behind, went to law school, and stepped into a world where nothing is written out in a script anymore. Christine Lakin and Staci Keanan. Christine kept working in the business, not just acting, but moving heavily into directing too, with a long list of television episodes from behind the camera. Staci, meanwhile, left Dana Foster completely behind, studied law, practiced under the name Anastasia Sigorsky, worked as a deputy district attorney in Los Angeles, and even taught law as well. Number 7. Step by Step failed the test, but won the whole Friday night. If you only looked at some of those early audience tests, Step by Step probably did not seem like the kind of show anybody would want to bet on for the long haul. In the TGIF oral history, even the people involved remembered that there was joking inside the company about how the show tested pretty clearly below average. On paper, that is not a pretty signal. It is not the kind of thing that makes people sit in a meeting room and slam the table and say, "That is it. This is the future of Friday night." But then again, American television has always had one very funny habit. It can measure reactions in a test room, but it cannot always measure what real families actually want to turn on in their own living rooms. And with Step by Step, that is where everything shifted. Kids liked it. Families liked it. That was enough to keep it alive. Because sometimes ordinary viewers understand television faster than the systems built to judge it. Number 6. The price of looking perfect on a sitcom. You look at Dana Foster and see a sharp, smart young woman who always seems like she already has the stronger argument before anybody else even opens their mouth. What you do not see are the lights, the camera angles, the pressure of having to show up week after week at an age when a lot of people still do not even know how they are supposed to see themselves. Later on, when looking back at that period, Staci Keanan talked about difficult subjects like body dysmorphia and eating disorders. Even though she weighed only about 45 kilograms, Staci Keanan struggled with body image issues throughout the making of this show. Her mother was one of the biggest causes behind those problems. And now, let us count down the final 5 weird facts. Trust me, from here on out, things only get stranger. Number 5. Step by Step has a coincidence. So weird it sounds like something fans made up. Step by Step is set in Port Washington, Wisconsin. Sounds perfectly normal. But then somebody looked at Interstate 43, running through that area, looked at the exit numbers near the town, and decided to turn the whole thing into a weird little number puzzle built around Suzanne Somers. And this is where it gets strange, because the more you look, the more it lines up in a way that feels weirdly exact. Exit 100, the road leading into downtown Port Washington, matches the alphabetical value of the spelling Suzanne. And it does not stop there. South of town there is exit 89, and 89 matches Somers, while also matching the spelling Susanna. And if that still is not strange enough for you, the exits in between also line up one by one with other variations like Suzanne, Susanna, and Susanna. Number 4. Carol had a baby. Late. But Suzanne Somers became a mother at 19. It is strange, is it not? This is not one of those dark facts, but it is still weird enough to make today's list. You look at Carol Foster Lambert on Step by Step, and you immediately see a mother who seems like she was almost done raising kids already. The house is full of older children, the new marriage is already carrying the weight of a blended family, and then the show still has Carol give birth to Lily. So the feeling is very clear. This is the kind of mother having a baby fairly late, almost stepping into a brand new round of motherhood, at a point when a lot of other sitcoms would already have let the character rest. Number 3. After helping build. TGIF for years. Step by Step got pushed aside by ABC. Some shows die loudly, and everybody sees it coming from a mile away. But Step by Step did not go out that way. What bothers me about this story is that it used to be such a familiar part of Friday night on ABC, such a real piece of that whole TGIF machine an entire generation grew up with. You turned on the TV, and there they were, Frank, Carol, the kids, that messy but comforting family atmosphere. It was not some decorative extra sitting off to the side. It was part of the family. And then, in May of 1997, ABC canceled the show because the ratings had dropped. That was it. Cold, clean, no flourish, not even a proper goodbye. And maybe that is just normal in Hollywood. A show can live with you for years, walk into your living room week after week, and then in the end get treated like a product that no longer works well enough on a spreadsheet. Not because it did anything terribly wrong, it just was not winning the race anymore. Number 2. You may forget the episodes, but you will not forget the feeling of Step by Step. If I asked you right now to tell me the plots of 10 Step by Step episodes, could you do it? I doubt that would be easy. But if that opening theme starts playing, if that roller coaster shows up, if the whole family starts crowding into that opening sequence that feels both chaotic and joyful, like a Friday night breeze, I would bet you recognize it within the first few seconds. And that is the strangest thing about this show. The biggest legacy of Step by Step is not in the individual episodes, it is in the feeling the show left behind. Some sitcoms are remembered for one special episode. Some stay alive because of a big twist, a scandal, or one peak season. Step by Step took a completely different road. It slipped into people's memory through sound, through rhythm, through that very specific TGIF atmosphere, through that feeling that the family had sat down and Friday night had officially begun. You may forget what the story was that week, but it is very hard to forget the feeling this show gave you. Honestly, I have always thought that is the hardest kind of television immortality to achieve. Not making viewers remember every detail, but making it so that one little piece of music, one image, one familiar staircase can bring an entire stretch of life back to the surface on its own. Number 1. Step by Step. Almost had a beautiful ending, but the audience never got to see it. Maybe the saddest thing about Step by Step is that this show never really got to say goodbye. For a lot of people, it was not just some old sitcom. It was a familiar house, a familiar living room, a familiar staircase, and a family you visited every week as if they would always be there. A show like that should have gotten a proper ending. A moment for the audience to sit back, smile, and accept that this story had finally reached its close. And the part I regret most is that they almost had exactly that ending. The plan was once headed toward Dana and Rich getting married in that very house. Just hearing it, you can tell it fits. No giant stunt, no shocking twist. Just bring the audience back to the place they had lived with for so many years and close the circle with a ceremony warm enough, intimate enough, and true enough to the spirit of Step by Step. That is the kind of ending a television family like this deserved. But it never happened. The show was stopped before it could get there. Honestly, I have always found an unfinished ending sadder than a bad ending. At least a bad ending is still a final goodbye. Here, the audience was robbed of the feeling of closure itself. Maybe that is why Step by Step has stayed in so many people's memory for so long. Not just because of what it had, but because its best goodbye was the one thing it never got the chance to give. And maybe that is the thing I love most about movies, sitcoms, and scenes people think they already know too well. The more familiar they are, the easier it is for them to hide their strangest secrets. Now, I want to hear from you. Out of all the weird facts about Step by Step today, which one knocked you over the hardest? And what other classic movie or sitcom do you think is hiding strange behind the scenes, stories just like this? Tell me. But there is something interesting about the shows that live the longest in our memories. The more familiar they feel, the easier it is to think we already know everything about them. But behind it, there is an entire layer of backstage stories that many viewers have never heard. So today, we are heading back to Hazard County and uncovering the most fascinating secrets behind the Dukes of Hazzard. And trust me, a few of them may make you see this series in a completely different way.